two sculptors stand before identical blocks of marble. The first has the vision in his mind with perfect clarity. He can see the finished form, studies the marble daily, thinks about the sculpture constantly, and holds the image with devotion while he waits for the right moment to begin. Years pass. The marble remains untouched. The second sculptor has the same vision. But the moment it crystallizes, he does something the first sculptor never did. He speaks it, not to the marble, not to the room, into the invisible fabric of existence itself. With authority, with precision, with the absolute conviction of a creator who understands that the spoken word is not the description of the work. It is the work. Florence Scovel Shinn spent her life teaching the single most misunderstood truth in all of metaphysical literature. Your good does not wait for your readiness. It waits for your word. The spiritual development world has produced millions of silent waiters. People who hold visions, feel feelings, write journals, and maintain inner states of carefully tended positivity while their desired good remains perpetually on the horizon. They have done everything the invisible world has asked of them, or so they believe. They have cultivated the feeling of the wish fulfilled. They have rehearsed the inner image until it is vivid and precise. They have held their faith against the daily evidence of its absence. And still, the horizon does not yield. What they do not understand, what Florence Scovel Shinn identifies with a precision that leaves no room for comfortable ambiguity, is that the architecture of creation they have been working within is incomplete. The foundation is present. The walls are framed, but the structure was never sealed, never committed, never driven into the invisible ground, with the one act that crosses the threshold between a private possibility and living creation. That missing element is the word, not the thought, not the feeling, not the visualization, however detailed and devotional. The spoken word, issued with authority, in the present tense, from the position of a person who comprehends their creative dominion, is the specific mechanism by which the invisible submits itself to form. Shinn draws a distinction that the modern contemplative tradition has largely collapsed. Thought conceives, but the spoken word creates. These are not synonyms. They are not interchangeable stages of the same act. Conception without creation is the sculptor with the vision and the untouched marble. It is the perpetual preparation that never becomes the thing itself. The moment the word is spoken with genuine conviction, something that was suspended in the realm of pure potential is committed to the realm of inevitable form. The man who never speaks his good into being is not a man without creative power. He is a man who possesses a creative instrument of immense force and leaves it unused every hour of every day. He is not failing because the universe is withholding. He is failing because he has never issued the command that the universe is waiting to obey. Shinn's teaching is not a comfort offered to the weary seeker. It is a correction delivered to the capable one. A precise identification of the single point at which the creative act breaks down, and a clear instruction for what must be done instead. You are not lacking vision. You are not lacking faith. You are lacking the word. And that is the only thing you need to supply. What follows is not an introduction to a new philosophy. It is an excavation of a teaching that Florence Scovel Shinn carried for decades, delivered in lecture halls and private consultations, encoded in 4 small books that have outlasted the entire cultural moment in which they were written. Her word was not metaphor. Her law was not suggestion. And what will be revealed in the course of this examination is the precise understanding of spoken language as a creative force that does not merely express reality, it constructs it. This is the distinction that changes everything. And it is the distinction that most readers of Shinn's work have passed over without fully registering its weight. You will understand exactly how the word operates in the invisible world. Not as a spiritual symbol, not as a psychological tool for self-conditioning, but as a literal event that sets forces in motion with a specificity and authority that silent thought cannot replicate. The mechanics of this process are not mysterious. They are precise, learnable, and immediately applicable. Shinn was not a theoretical philosopher. She was a practitioner, a counselor, and a cartographer of results. And the map she drew leads from the spoken word to the visible good with a logic that, once understood, cannot be unfollowed. You will also come to understand why so many careful, well-intentioned, spiritually earnest people remain in states of chronic unfulfillment. Not because the law is silent on their behalf, but because they have been speaking their limitations into permanent existence without ever recognizing what they are doing. Every word spoken in resignation, in complaint, in casual acknowledgement of lack, is a creative decree. The universe does not distinguish between the word you speak in prayer and the word you speak at the kitchen table. It responds to both with equal fidelity. Shinn's teaching on the word power is therefore not merely the revelation of a tool for creation. It is the revelation of a responsibility that has always been yours, operating whether you claimed it or not. The only question that remains is whether you will begin to use it with the precision it deserves. Florence Scovel Shinn does not begin with a theory. She begins with an observation that is so plainly stated and yet so completely at odds with the habitual assumptions of ordinary life, that its implications take considerable time to fully inhabit. The spoken word, she teaches, is not a symbol pointing at reality. It is not a label attached to a pre-existing condition. It is not the verbal shadow cast by a prior mental event. The spoken word is a creative event in its own right, self-initiating, self-authorizing, and self-executing. And the moment it is released into the world with genuine conviction and clear intention, it does not merely describe a desired condition. It begins one. To understand this fully, one must first understand what Shinn means by the invisible world. The dimension of formless substance, of unmanifest potential, that underlies and precedes every visible condition that has ever existed. This is not a dimension that operates according to the ordinary laws of time and sequence. In the invisible world, there is no distance between the word and the thing the word names. The declaration, "My good comes to me now," does not travel from the speaker's mouth to a distant storehouse of blessings that must then be routed back through the slow machinery of circumstance. It initiates a movement in the invisible world that is immediate, specific, and proportional to the force of conviction with which it was spoken. The word and the creation are not cause and effect in the ordinary sense. They are, in the deepest metaphysical sense, the same event at different stages of its expression. This is the point at which Shinn diverges from the entire tradition of contemplative seeking that treats the inner life as the exclusive domain of creation and the outer life as the lagging indicator. She does not dismiss the inner life. She does not minimize the importance of the mental image or the feeling tone of the desired reality. What she insists upon, with the authority of someone who spent decades watching this law operate in the lives of the men and women she counseled, is that the inner creative act reaches its full power only when it is given form in the physical world through the spoken word. The word is not the announcement of the creation. It is the completion of it. Consider what it means for something to be spoken aloud with genuine authority and present tense certainty. The speaker's mind is engaged with the content of the declaration. The speaker's breath, that most ancient symbol of the animating principle, the substance of life itself, carries the declaration from the interior world into the exterior one. The sound waves generated by the spoken word are a literal physical event, a vibration introduced into the world that was not there before the speaking. And beneath all of this, at the level of formless substance that Shinn and Wattles and every serious metaphysician has written about, the specific quality of that vibration, shaped by the content of the word, the conviction behind it, and the spiritual authority of the speaker, impresses itself upon the invisible world and sets its organizing forces in motion toward the form that was named. This is not poetry. This is the precise mechanics of a law. What the spoken word accomplishes that silent thought cannot is commitment. This is a word that must be understood in its fullest philosophical weight. To commit is to remove a possibility from the realm of the purely potential and to stake it in the world as an actuality. Silent thought, however vivid and sustained, remains in the domain of possibility. It has not yet crossed the threshold into declaration. It can be retracted, revised, or quietly abandoned without consequence, because the world has not yet been asked to receive it. The moment the word is spoken aloud with full intention, that threshold is crossed. The private has become public, not necessarily in the social sense, but in the cosmic sense. The speaker has made a declaration to the invisible world. And the invisible world, Shinn teaches, is a perfect and tireless executor of what is declared to it with authority. This is why Shinn's counseling practice produced results that seemed, to those who witnessed them, to operate outside the ordinary boundaries of cause and effect. Women who came to her on the verge of financial collapse left with a spoken word and returned weeks later with conditions transformed. Men whose health had been diagnosed as irreversible found the diagnosis reversing. Children who had been estranged from their parents for decades were reunited with a swiftness that staggered those involved. These were not miracles in the sense of violations of natural law. They were demonstrations of a natural law that most people never invoke. The law that the universe executes the spoken word of one who speaks from the position of their divine creative authority. Not sometime, not eventually. With the precision of a craftsman who has been given exact instructions and the materials to fulfill them. What makes the spoken word a living force, rather than merely an articulate one, is precisely this quality of life that is breathed into it by conviction. A word spoken without conviction is a word without a soul. It makes sound. It may be grammatically correct and semantically appropriate, but it does not initiate creation, because the creative force requires a medium to work through. And that medium is the full alignment of the speaker's knowledge, intention, and authority at the moment of speaking. This is not a demand that the speaker achieve some superhuman state of spiritual purity before their words can take effect. It is a demand that the speaker understand what they are doing when they speak, that they stand in the place of a creator issuing a command, not a petitioner submitting a request. The distinction between the command and the petition is not one of verbal form alone. It is a distinction of stance, of understood relationship to the creative force of the universe. Shinn teaches that every human being stands in a relationship of absolute entitlement to their good. Not entitlement in the sense of arrogance or demand, but in the sense of spiritual law. The good that you desire is not held in a reservoir that may or may not be released in your direction based on your worthiness. It is yours by the law of your being. The spoken word, issued from this position of known entitlement, does not ask the universe to comply. It notifies the universe of what is already true in the domain of spiritual law and invites the visible world to catch up with the invisible reality that the word has established. One of the deepest and most practically consequential aspects of Shinn's teaching on the spoken word as a living force is its relationship to time. The ordinary human mind relates to desire and its fulfillment as events separated by an interval of time. An interval that must be filled with effort, patience, and the management of doubt. Shinn's understanding dissolves this interval at the root, because she understands that the spoken word, when issued from the position of divine creative authority, does not operate in the ordinary time dimension. It operates in the dimension of spiritual law, where the declaration and its fulfillment are not separated by time, but by the thickness of the visible world's ability to receive and express what has already been established in the invisible. The word creates in the invisible the moment it is spoken. The visible world then moves to express that creation at the speed that is natural to its own dimension. This understanding transforms the experience of what ordinary language calls waiting. The man who has spoken his good into being with genuine authority and conviction is not waiting for something to happen. He is watching something arrive that has already been created. The distinction is not merely semantic, it is a complete transformation of the inner posture, the energetic relationship between the speaker and the desired good, and therefore of the conditions under which the visible expression is able to occur. The tense of the expectation changes everything. The man who waits for his good to be given is in a posture of receptive passivity. The man who watches his spoken creation arrive is in a posture of assured reception. And those two postures, Shinn teaches, produce measurably different results in the visible world. It is worth dwelling on the specific choice of words that Shinn herself favored in her affirmations and claims, because this choice was never arbitrary. And the precision of her language was itself a demonstration of the principle she taught. She consistently chose words that carried the qualities of finality, present reality, and divine authorization. She did not say, "I hope to receive my good." She said, "My good comes to me now." She did not say, "I am trying to release fear." She said, "I cast this burden upon the Christ within, and I go free." The language is not merely positive, it is operational. Each word is selected for its capacity to activate the creative law, not merely to express a desired mental state. This is the difference between speaking and creating. And it is a difference that can be learned, practiced, and embodied until it becomes the natural stance from which all language proceeds. The living force of the spoken word is not diminished by repetition. It is augmented by it, provided the repetition carries the same quality of conviction each time. This is one of Shinn's most important practical teachings, and it is frequently misunderstood. People who encounter the practice of affirmation for the first time often approach repetition as a mechanical exercise in self-conditioning, as if saying the same words enough times will eventually produce belief through sheer familiarity. Shinn's understanding is fundamentally different. Repetition in her practice is not about building up to conviction through frequency. It is about sustaining the creative act, keeping the spoken word active, present, and alive in the dimension where it is doing its work, until the visible world has had sufficient time to arrange itself around the invisible reality that the word established from the first genuine utterance. The visible world, Shinn teaches, sometimes requires multiple declarations, not because the first one failed to create, but because the visible world's resistance to new forms, what she sometimes calls the crystallized conditions of old thinking, is substantial enough that it requires sustained creative pressure to dissolve and reorganize. The river does not fail to carve the canyon because the first day's flow did not cut the rock. It sustains the force of its nature against the resistance of the material until the material yields to what the water's nature has always demanded. The spoken word of authority is that force. The visible conditions of current reality are that material. And the outcome is not in question. What is perhaps the most radical implication of Shinn's teaching on the spoken word as a living force is its democratizing character. This law does not operate selectively. It is not granted to the spiritually advanced while withheld from the ordinary person. It does not respond more readily to the words of the educated, the affluent, or the traditionally religious. It responds to conviction, to the quality of authority with which the word is spoken, to the degree to which the speaker understands and claims their divine creative standing. This means that the instrument of creation through the spoken word is equally available to every human being who has ever drawn breath. And it means that every human being who has ever drawn breath has been using it, whether knowingly or not. The only variable is whether they have been using it with awareness and precision, or using it blindly against themselves. The full weight of this last point deserves a moment of undefended attention. If the spoken word is indeed a living creative force, if every declaration issued with conviction is received by the invisible world as an instruction to be executed, then the implications extend far beyond the deliberate practice of affirmations or claims. They extend to every word spoken in resignation, in habitual complaint, in casual acknowledgement of limitation. They extend to every time you have said, "I can never seem to get ahead," or "My health has always been poor," or "Things like that don't happen to people like me." Each of those statements, Shinn teaches, carries the same creative authority as the most carefully constructed claim of abundance, directed with perfect fidelity toward the exact condition it names. The invisible world is not selective in what it executes. It is comprehensive, exact, and utterly impartial. The modern failure that Florence Scovel Shinn diagnosed with such surgical precision is not a failure of desire. The people she counseled wanted their good with the full force of human longing. They wanted health, abundance, love, and order, with the kind of yearning that kept them awake at night and drove them to the doors of a metaphysical teacher before the world had fully agreed that such a teacher was a legitimate destination. The failure she identified was not motivational. It was architectural. The creative structure they were working within had a fundamental flaw that no amount of emotional intensity or sustained inner focus could correct. And that flaw was the absence of the spoken word as the completing act of creation. What Shinn provides, therefore, is not a new desire. It is the architecture that allows desire to become form. To understand why this architecture is not merely practical, but logically necessary. Why the spoken word is not one option among several creative methods, but the irreplaceable completing element of the creative act. One must understand the structure of the human creative instrument as Shinn presents it. The human being, in her teaching, is not a passive receiver of conditions determined by forces outside the self. The human being is a creative center, a specific and individualized expression of the divine creative principle, through which the formless substance of the universe takes on the particular forms that the creative center commands. This is not a metaphor. It is Shinn's literal description of the human being's relationship to the universe, and it has a specific and important implication. The universe requires a command from the creative center in order to produce form. It does not generate conditions spontaneously. It waits for direction. The spoken word is the most complete form of command available to the human creative instrument. This is its unshakable logic. The mental image without the spoken word is a design that has not been submitted to the builder. The feeling without the spoken word is a resonance that has not been given an address. The silent intention without the spoken word is a vector without a declaration of its destination. Each of these inner conditions is necessary and generative in its own right. Shinn does not dismiss them, but none of them alone constitutes the complete creative act, because none of them alone crosses the threshold from the inner world of the speaker into the outer world of the universe's creative machinery. The spoken word is the act of crossing. It is the submission of the design to the builder, with full authority and specific instruction. Consider the nature of this threshold in its most precise metaphysical articulation. The inner world of thought and feeling exists in the dimension of the subject, the dimension of experience, of private reality, of what is true for the individual in the interior of their being. The outer world exists in the dimension of the object, the dimension of shared reality, of manifested form, of what is true for the world at large. Between these two dimensions, there is a threshold that must be crossed for inner creative intention to become outer manifested form. Shinn teaches that this crossing is not automatic. It is not accomplished by the mere intensity of inner experience. It is accomplished by the spoken word, which is simultaneously an event in the inner world, originating in the mind and charged with the speaker's conviction, and an event in the outer world, a physical vibration, a real occurrence in shared reality that the universe receives as direction and acts upon with the precision of a law. This is the unshakable logic at the heart of Shinn's teaching. The spoken word bridges the two dimensions of reality through which creation must pass in order to move from the invisible to the visible. It is not a spiritual technique invented for human convenience. It is the natural structure of the creative process, as Shinn understands it, built into the architecture of existence itself. When one examines the cosmologies of virtually every serious metaphysical tradition, from the Hebrew teaching that the world was spoken into existence by the divine word, to the Sanskrit tradition of the mantra as a vibrational creation, to the Hermetic understanding of the Logos as the principle of cosmic organization, one finds the same essential insight. At the root of creation is a spoken word, and the creative authority that the human being exercises is a participation in that same primordial creative act. Shinn did not invent this. She recovered it. What Shinn did that was genuinely original was translate this cosmological understanding into a precise, practical, and immediately actionable personal practice. She did not leave the teaching in the domain of theology or abstract metaphysics. She brought it into the counseling room, the financial crisis, the failing relationship, the deteriorating body, and demonstrated case by case, result by result, that the spoken word of authority produces measurable change in visible conditions. Her 4 books are not philosophical treatises. They are field reports, and what the field reports consistently demonstrate is that the spoken word, when issued from the correct inner position and with the correct qualities of conviction, tense, and specificity, produces results that cannot be adequately explained by the psychological theory of self-suggestion or the sociological theory of altered behavior. the invisible world responds. That is the unshakable conclusion of the evidence she accumulated. The internal logic of why the spoken word must be in the present tense deserves particular development, because this is one of the elements that most people understand only intellectually, without fully grasping its metaphysical necessity. The present tense is not a grammatical convention. It is the only temporal address at which the creative law operates. The universe does not have a future tense. In the dimension of formless substance, there is no interval of time separating the current moment from the moment of fulfillment. There is only the current moment, which is always the moment of creation. When the spoken word is cast in the future tense, I will be prosperous. I am going to find my right place. It does not initiate creation in the present moment. It projects the creation into a future that, by the logic of this very formulation, never arrives. The future tense carries within it the implicit assumption of a present absence. And the universe, responding to the full content of the declaration, including its temporal implication, faithfully reproduces the condition of present absence, while perpetually projecting the desired good one step ahead. The present tense claim, by contrast, operates from the understanding that what is true in the invisible world is already true, that the law has already established the good as a reality in the dimension of spiritual substance, and that the spoken word in the present tense is not a prediction or wish, but a recognition and an activation. My good comes to me now does not mean at some point in the proximate future. It means in the domain of spiritual law, which is more real than the visible world currently reflecting its opposite. This is already the case. This understanding is not denial of present visible conditions. It is the assertion of a deeper and more fundamental reality that the visible world is in the process of expressing. The present tense claim does not ignore the problem. It supersedes it. By speaking from a level of reality at which the problem has already been resolved, the requirement of specificity in the creative word is equally non-negotiable and equally misunderstood. Vagueness in the spoken word is not a minor inefficiency. It is a fundamental failure of the creative act, because the formless substance responds to the precise instruction it receives. And a vague instruction produces a vague result, if it produces a result at all. Shinn observed this repeatedly in her practice. The person who claimed some kind of improvement in my situation received, if they received anything, some kind of improvement, unrecognizable as the good they were actually seeking, because they had not been specific enough to give the creative force clear direction. The person who claimed divine order is established in my finances, and the exact sum I need arrives through the perfect channel at the exact right moment, gave the creative force a specific and complete instruction. And the creative force, which is not a generalist but a precise executor of declared intention, delivered accordingly. Specificity, however, must not be confused with the attachment to a particular mechanism. This is one of Shinn's most subtle and important distinctions. The spoken word must be specific about what is desired, the quality, the nature, the essential character of the good. But it must not be specific about how that good arrives or through what channel. I need $5,000, and I need it by selling my car to a specific buyer by next Tuesday, is not specificity in Shinn's sense. It is interference, the human mind's attempt to manage the creative process rather than command it. True specificity names the good clearly and leaves the universe free to deliver it through its own perfect and often unexpected channels. This is the difference between a creative command and a micromanaged wish. And the difference in results between the two is, in Shinn's recorded experience, enormous. The quality of authority that must accompany the spoken word is perhaps the most interior and the most difficult to describe without sliding into the vocabulary of motivation or emotional performance, both of which Shinn would have regarded with equal suspicion. Authority, in her teaching, is not a feeling that must be worked up to. It is not a state of emotional confidence that must be maintained against the pressure of doubt. It is an understanding, a settled intellectual and spiritual comprehension of one's actual relationship to the creative force of the universe. The person who speaks with authority does not do so because they feel particularly powerful in the moment of speaking. They do so because they know, with the same matter-of-fact clarity with which they know that the laws of physics will operate tomorrow, that the law of the spoken word is real, that their standing as a creative instrument of the divine is real, and that the good they are claiming is theirs by the law of their being. This settled, knowledge-based quality of authority is what distinguishes Shinn's teaching from the popular practice of affirmations, as most people have encountered it. The person who recites affirmations while secretly doubting their truth is not exercising the creative authority that Shinn describes. They are engaged in a practice of repetitive self-suggestion that may or may not gradually build up a sufficient thickness of inner conviction to eventually produce some effect. What Shinn calls for is different and more demanding. She calls for the speaker to arrive at a genuine understanding of why the claim is true, not just what the claim states, so that the authority with which it is spoken arises from knowledge rather than from performance. The spoken word created by knowledge is a different instrument from the spoken word created by hope, and the invisible world knows the difference. What then must a person actually understand in order to speak with this quality of authority? At minimum, Shinn teaches they must understand three things. First, that the universe is not a withholding power, but a completing one. That it does not hold back the good, but awaits the specific command through which the good can be delivered. Second, that their creative standing is not conditional upon their worthiness, their past record, or the opinions of others. It is a fact of their nature as an individualized expression of the divine creative principle. Third, that the creative law is universal and impartial, that it does not favor the specially initiated over the ordinary person, but responds with equal fidelity to every word spoken with genuine authority by anyone who understands and claims their creative standing. These three understandings, taken together and fully internalized, produce the authority that makes the spoken word genuinely creative rather than merely verbal. The final element of Shinn's unshakable logic is the one that requires the most honest confrontation. If the spoken word is a living creative force, if it operates with the precision and fidelity she describes, then the implications extend beyond the deliberate and conscious use of claims and affirmations. They extend to the entirety of one's spoken life. The implications of this fact are not comfortable, and Shinn did not make them comfortable. She stated them with the directness of a physician delivering a diagnosis. You have been creating your entire life, with every word spoken in conviction. The question has never been whether you are creative. The question is whether you have been aware of what you have been creating, and whether you are willing to take complete responsibility for the creative authority you exercise at every moment of your spoken life. This responsibility is not a burden. Framed correctly, framed as Shinn framed it, It is the most liberating recognition available to a human being. If you have been creating your limitations as faithfully and as powerfully as you can create your good, then the conditions of your life are not the verdict of fate, the product of forces outside your control, or the cumulative result of circumstances that preceded your understanding. They are the product of your own creative authority, operating without full awareness. And if that is true, if the conditions of your life are the product of your creative word, then the single act of bringing that creative authority into full conscious alignment with the good you desire has the power to transform every visible condition that your unconscious creative speech has been perpetuating. This is not a promise of convenience. It is the logical conclusion of a law that has been operating in your life since before you had words to speak it. Wattles, writing in the opening years of the 20th century, established with disciplined clarity the foundational principle that underlies all genuine metaphysical teaching on the creation of material wealth. The universe is composed of a formless substance, a thinking, responsive, and infinitely creative medium. And the act of impressing a clear and sustained mental image upon that substance, held in unwavering faith and gratitude, initiates the process by which the image takes on visible form in the world. This is a teaching of enormous power. It relocates the origin of material conditions from the external world of circumstance into the internal world of the concentrated, faith-filled mind. But Wattles, for all the precision of his cosmological framework, leaves a specific question unanswered. Not because he was ignorant of the answer, but because the full flowering of that answer required exactly the teaching that Florence Scovel Shinn would bring. The question that Wattles leaves at the threshold of its most complete practical articulation is this: what is the most powerful and complete act by which the mental image is impressed upon the formless substance? Wattles describes the necessary qualities of the impression: clarity, faith, gratitude, present tense certainty. He describes the inner posture required. He describes the relationship between the thinker and the thinking substance with extraordinary precision. But the specific instrument through which this impression is most completely and powerfully made, the act that takes the inner qualities Wattles describes and drives them across the threshold from the inner world of the thinker into the outer world of the formless substance's creative machinery, is precisely what Shinn provides. The spoken word is that instrument, and it is not an alternative to the inner practice Wattles describes. It is its natural completion. Consider the mechanics of impression as Wattles articulates them. For the mental image to impress itself upon the formless substance, it must be held with a specific quality of faith, not as a hypothesis, not as a hope, but as a known reality. It must be accompanied by gratitude, the emotional and intellectual acknowledgement that the thing is already received in the domain of spiritual law. It must be sustained against the visible evidence of its absence without wavering. Each of these conditions is a description of an inner state, and the spoken word is the act that takes each of those inner states and gives them physical reality, concrete form, and the quality of declaration that transforms them from inner experiences into outward commands. The faith that Wattles requires is not expressed merely in the mind when the claim is spoken aloud. It is embodied, made real, given form, driven into the dimension of the visible world where it can meet the formless substance's creative force on its own ground. Shinn herself, while she did not use Wattles's vocabulary of the formless substance as her primary register, arrived at the same essential cosmological position through the language of new thought and her own deep engagement with the metaphysical implications of Christian scripture. Her understanding of the law of the word is structurally identical to Wattles' understanding of the impression, but she adds to it the specific instrument that makes the impression most complete. Where Wattles says that the creative thinker must hold the image in faith and gratitude, Shinn says that the image held in faith and gratitude reaches its full creative power when it is also spoken into the universe with the authority of one who knows their divine creative standing. The two teachings are not in tension. They are in sequence. Wattles establishes what must be impressed. Shinn provides the instrument of fullest impression. The bridge between these two teachers is not merely logical. It is observable in the patterns of result that each of them documented. Wattles' practitioners who achieved the transformation he described consistently reported not only the maintenance of the inner image, but also the use of spoken declarations, prayers, and affirmations as part of their practice. As if the inner process naturally sought completion in the spoken act, Shinn's practitioners, without exception, operated from an inner position of knowing and faith, the precise qualities Wattles described, as the necessary ground from which the spoken word could exercise its creative force. Neither system produced results in the absence of the other's essential contribution. The word without faith is noise. The faith without the word is incomplete creation. Together, they constitute the full architecture of the creative act, as the great metaphysical tradition understood it. It is worth noting, and the note carries considerable metaphysical weight, that this understanding of the spoken word as the completing act of impression is not merely the invention of 20th century New Thought. The cosmological tradition that places the word at the origin of creation is among the most ancient and universal in human history, the Hebrew tradition of Bereshit. In the beginning, the word treats the spoken divine command as the mechanism by which formless void is organized into created reality. The Sanskrit teaching of Nada Brahma holds that the universe itself is composed of vibrational sound, that what we call matter is the audible face of what is, at its root, a word spoken in the silence of the Absolute. The Hermetic tradition of the Logos teaches that the organizing principle of the cosmos is a kind of speech, a declaration of form from the formless. Shinn's teaching does not merely echo these traditions, it operationalizes them. It takes the cosmological principle that creation begins with a word and brings it into the lived experience of a woman struggling with unpaid bills in 20th century New York. What the Wattles-Shinn bridge therefore establishes is not a synthesis of two independent methods. It is the recognition that they were always describing the same law from complementary positions. Wattles approached the law from the side of the substance to be impressed, the what of creation. Shinn approached it from the side of the instrument of impression, the how. Together, they provide a complete map of the creative process in its full metaphysical architecture. The substance is real, responsive, and waiting to take on the form that is declared to it. The instrument that most completely declares that form is the spoken word of one who knows their creative authority. The result, when the instrument is applied to the substance with the full qualities of specificity, present tense certainty and authority, is the visible manifestation of what was invisible. The marble carved to the form that was spoken into it. The most practically powerful implication of this bridge for the person who is genuinely seeking to apply these teachings in their own life is the recognition that the inner and the outer are not separate practices to be maintained independently. They are two aspects of a single continuous creative act. The inner work of cultivating the clear mental image, the faith, the gratitude, and the knowing. This is the preparing of the instrument. The spoken word is the act of using it. One without the other is either a tool never lifted or a motion made without a tool. The complete practice is the inner preparation, followed immediately and consistently by the spoken declaration. The claim spoken not as a report of what the inner state has produced, but as the act that completes the creative impression and sets the invisible world in motion toward the visible expression of what has been declared. Wattles also teaches something that connects to Shinn's understanding with particular force when it is brought into full relief. The failure to impress the formless substance does not produce neutral results. It produces the continuation of the present condition, which, if the present condition is one of lack, means the active impression of lack continues, simply by default. Shinn's extension of this principle to the domain of the spoken word carries this observation to its full and rather confronting conclusion. The person who is not deliberately speaking their good into being is not existing in a creative vacuum. They are speaking their current conditions into perpetuation with every habitual and unconsidered word they utter. The default language of a life that has not been brought under the discipline of conscious creative speech is, in most cases, a continuous low-level stream of declarations of limitation. And each of those declarations is an act of impression upon the formless substance with exactly the creative authority that Shinn and Wattles both describe. This is the point at which the connection between these two teachers becomes not merely intellectually coherent, but existentially urgent. If Wattles is right that the formless substance responds to impressed thought with the creation of its material equivalent, and if Shinn is right that the spoken word is the most complete and powerful act of impression available to the human being, then the practical implication is that the spoken life of the ordinary person, the daily, hourly, moment-by-moment stream of habitual language, is the most powerful creative force operating in the production of their material conditions. Not their deliberate meditations, not their carefully constructed vision boards, not their periodic visits to a teacher or a text. The daily spoken life, the complaints at breakfast, the resigned assessments of the afternoon, the bedtime conclusions about what is possible, is the creative engine that, in most lives, runs continuously and unconsciously in the service of the perpetuation of existing limitations. The Wattles-Shinn framework, understood in its full force, demands nothing less than the total renovation of one's spoken life. This is not a small demand. It is perhaps the most comprehensive personal discipline that the metaphysical tradition imposes. More comprehensive than meditation, more comprehensive than the maintenance of a specific inner image, because it touches every dimension of daily experience in which language operates. It requires that the speaker bring the same quality of creative awareness to the word spoken in frustration as to the word spoken in deliberate affirmation. It requires that the casual remark be subjected to the same scrutiny as the formal claim, because the invisible world does not distinguish between the two. And it requires that this standard be maintained not as a performance of spiritual correctness, but as a practical understanding of what is being created, moment by moment, word by word, in the invisible world that precedes and produces the visible one. The extraordinary thing about the convergence of Wattles and Shinn on this point is that it effectively eliminates the most common escape route that the spiritually sincere but materially frustrated person takes. The route of attributing their unfulfilled desires to some quality of unworthiness, some karmic debt, some mysterious heavenly delay that is beyond their influence or understanding. If the law is as both teachers describe it, then the cause of unfulfilled good is never in the invisible world's unwillingness to deliver. It is always in the speaker's failure to issue the complete creative command with the qualities required for the law to execute it. This is a demanding teaching. It removes the comfort of inexplicable delay and replaces it with the responsibility of precise practice. But it also removes the helplessness that comes with attributing one's conditions to forces beyond one's reach, and replaces it with the knowledge that the creative instrument is in your hands. It has always been in your hands, and the only question is whether you will use it as it was designed to be used. The full logic of Shinn's system, understood through the bridge that Wattles builds between the nature of the creative substance and the nature of the creative act, arrives at a position of extraordinary clarity and extraordinary demand. The universe is a thinking substance that responds to the impressions made upon it by the creative instrument of the human mind and voice. The spoken word is the most complete and powerful form of that impression. The qualities required for the impression to produce the desired result: specificity, present tense reality, and authority arising from knowledge, are not gifts bestowed upon the specially favored, but disciplines accessible to every person who genuinely understands the law and is willing to apply it with consistency and rigor. The visible world you currently inhabit is the visible expression of the impressions that have been made upon the formless substance by the cumulative force of your spoken life. The visible world you will inhabit is the expression of the impressions you begin making from this moment forward. There is no third possibility. There is no neutral ground. The creative act is always in progress. The only question that remains is whether you are directing it. There is a failure so common, so deeply woven into the fabric of ordinary life, that it has ceased to be recognizable as a failure. It has become instead the accepted texture of human experience, the background radiation of resigned language that most people have been breathing in and breathing out since childhood, with no more awareness of its creative consequences than they have of the metabolic consequences of the air they breathe. Florence Scovel Shinn identified this failure with the precision of a diagnostician who has seen its effects too many times to mistake its cause, and she named it without softening its implications for the benefit of anyone's comfort. The failure is verbal poverty. The habitual, unconsidered, daily use of language that declares limitation, confirms scarcity, and speaks the ceiling into permanent existence with the same creative authority that the deliberate spoken word uses to call forth abundance. This is the modern condition that Shinn diagnosed. And the diagnosis was delivered long before the specific forms of verbal poverty that characterize contemporary life had taken on their present shape. She saw the pattern in its essential form, not the particular vocabulary of failure, but the structural habit of speaking limitation into being. And she identified it as the primary mechanism by which careful, well-intentioned people who genuinely desired better conditions continued to reproduce exactly the conditions they wanted most to escape. The word modern here deserves examination. Shinn was writing in the first decades of the 20th century, in a cultural moment that had not yet produced the specific forms of casual cynicism and resigned complaint that now constitute the ambient language of daily life. Yet her diagnosis of verbal poverty was exact. Because she was not describing a cultural fashion, she was describing a structural feature of the human relationship to language that is as old as the faculty of speech itself. What makes Shinn's diagnosis of verbal poverty both prescient and irrefutable is that it arrives from within the same metaphysical framework that explains why the deliberate spoken word creates good, which means that it cannot be dismissed as moral scolding or optimistic naivety. If the spoken word of authority creates by impressing the formless substance with the form it names, then this law does not have an exception clause for words spoken without awareness, without intention, or without the speaker's conscious desire to create the conditions they name. The law is impartial. It responds to the quality of the word and the conviction behind it, regardless of whether the conviction is deliberate or habitual, regardless of whether the speaker is consciously directing the creative force or merely venting frustration at the kitchen table. The casual complaint carries creative authority. The resigned sigh that is verbalized carries creative authority. The habitual declaration that things never change for me carries creative authority, and the universe receives each of them as an instruction and executes each of them with the same fidelity it brings to the most carefully crafted claim of abundance. Wattles warns with equal seriousness that the mind filled with images of lack impresses lack upon the formless substance and receives it in return. This is the interior dimension of verbal poverty, the mental world of limitation that gives rise to the spoken world of limitation. But Shinn's extension of this warning into the domain of the spoken word carries it to its full and rather terrifying scope, because the spoken word does not merely reflect the inner world of the speaker. It amplifies it. It commits it. It drives the impression of limitation from the private interior into the shared exterior, giving it the full creative force of the word that crosses the threshold from possibility into declaration. The man who merely thinks, "I cannot afford this," has impressed his lack upon the formless substance through the force of his inner image. The man who says aloud, "I can never afford anything I actually want," has done the same thing with the amplified creative force of the spoken word, and has done it in a form that is more resistant to correction, because it has now been stated as a fact of his experience, confirmed by his own voice, and received by the invisible world as an authoritative declaration of ongoing reality. The specific vocabulary of verbal poverty is worth examining with some care, because its effects are cumulative and its expressions are so familiar that they tend to pass through the speaker's awareness without triggering any recognition of their creative consequences. Consider the class of statement that might be called the resigned observation. "I've never been good with money. My family has always struggled. Things like this take forever for me." Each of these statements has the structure of a historical report, a neutral recording of past experience. But in the metaphysics of the spoken word, there is no such thing as a neutral historical report delivered with the conviction of lived experience. Each of these statements is, in the present moment of its utterance, an active, creative declaration. It names a condition, speaks it with the full conviction of someone who believes it to be simply and permanently true, and thereby directs the creative force of the universe to maintain that condition as the governing reality of the speaker's experience. Consider next the class of statement that might be called the defensive anticipation. I'm not going to get my hopes up. This probably won't work. Knowing my luck, something will go wrong. These are perhaps the most insidious forms of verbal poverty, because they masquerade as a form of psychological self-protection, a reasonable hedging against disappointment. But in the language of Shinn's teaching, they are something far more consequential. They are preemptive commands to the invisible world. They direct the creative force not toward the desired good, but toward the anticipated failure. With the full emotional conviction of someone who has already decided the outcome. And the invisible world, receiving these commands with the impartiality it brings to all declarations, executes them with the precision they deserve. The emotional conviction behind the words of verbal poverty is precisely what makes them so effective as creative instruments of limitation. And this is a point that Shinn's teaching forces into full daylight with uncomfortable directness. The person who speaks words of limitation does not do so feebly or reluctantly. They speak them with the full force of lived experience, confirmed belief, and emotional intensity. "I have never been able to hold onto money" is not spoken in a whisper of uncertainty. It is spoken with the conviction of someone who has counted the evidence and arrived at a certain conclusion. And in the creative economy of the spoken word, conviction is the amplifying force that gives the declaration its creative power. This means that the most emotionally convincing declarations of limitation are, in Shinn's framework, also the most powerfully creative, creating and recreating the very conditions they describe, with maximum force and minimum interference. This is the full scope of what Shinn means when she speaks of verbal poverty as not merely the absence of good creative speech, but as its active opposite. A continuous, high-powered, emotionally charged creative program running in the service of limitation, lack, and the perpetuation of precisely the conditions the speaker most desires to escape. The horror of this situation, and Shinn does not flinch from the horror of it, is that the creative instrument that could be used with equal force and equal conviction to call forth abundance is already being used every day with maximum conviction to call forth its exact opposite. The person is not lacking creative power. They are lacking creative direction. The instrument is fully operative. It is simply aimed at the wrong target, and it has been aimed there long enough that the target now looks like the natural condition of that person's life. The practice of eradicating verbal poverty, as Shinn describes it, is therefore not merely the practice of adding good words to one's vocabulary while leaving the existing stream of limiting language in place. It is the complete renovation of one's spoken life. The systematic identification and replacement of every habitual declaration of limitation with a deliberate creative claim of the corresponding good. This is not a practice of denial. Shinn is explicit that the recognition of a difficulty and the clear-eyed assessment of a current condition are not the same thing as the creative declaration of that condition as a permanent reality. One can observe, there appears to be a shortage of funds in my present circumstances, without declaring, I never have enough money and I never will. The former is an observation, the latter is a command. And the discipline of Shinn's verbal practice consists precisely in maintaining this distinction at every moment of the spoken day, observing conditions without decreeing them, and decreeing the desired reality with the full creative authority of the spoken word. What is perhaps most clarifying about Shinn's treatment of verbal poverty is the relationship it reveals between the language of limitation and the underlying belief structure from which it arises. Verbal poverty is not the cause of the limiting conditions it perpetuates. It is both the symptom and the mechanism of perpetuation simultaneously. The habitual declaration of limitation arises from a deep belief in the reality and permanence of that limitation, a belief that was itself created, in many cases, by the habitual language of limitation that the speaker absorbed from their environment before they had any understanding of the creative consequences of spoken words. This means that the renovation of verbal poverty operates in two directions at once. The deliberate spoken word of authority gradually dissolves the underlying belief that gave rise to the limiting language, while simultaneously creating the new conditions in the invisible world that will, in time, provide visible evidence that the new belief is the truer one. The spoken word is simultaneously the architect of the new invisible reality, and the instrument of the interior renovation required to sustain it. The person who undertakes the complete renovation of their spoken life in the manner that Shinn describes will inevitably encounter the full resistance of their existing belief structure. Which is also to say, the full resistance of their existing conditions, both inner and outer. The familiar language of limitation will present itself as reasonable, justified, and simply accurate. The new claims of abundance and goodwill present themselves, in the early stages, as aspirational at best and delusional at worst. This is the precise moment at which the understanding of the law becomes the only reliable anchor. Because it is understanding, not feeling, that must sustain the practice through the period between the first spoken word and the first visible evidence. The person who understands why the spoken word of authority creates does not need to feel convinced in order to speak with authority. They need to know, as one knows a mathematical law, that the operation is real, that its results are inevitable, and that the only variable is the consistency and precision with which they bring the practice to bear against the accumulated weight of a spoken life that has, until now, been working comprehensively against them. In the fullest view, the eradication of verbal poverty is not a spiritual discipline added to an otherwise ordinary life. It is the transformation of the instrument through which the creative force of the universe is accessed at every hour of every day. Every casual remark becomes a creative choice. Every habitual complaint becomes an opportunity for creative renovation. Every moment in which the old language rises to name a limitation becomes the precise moment at which the new language can be spoken instead, not as a denial of what is, but as a declaration of what is becoming, grounded in the knowledge of a law that is more real and more permanent than any visible condition it is in the process of dissolving. This is the full scope of the eradication of verbal poverty, and it is the most demanding and the most transformative practice that Florence Scovel Shinn ever taught. The claim, as Florence Scovel Shinn teaches it, is not a technique. It is not a formulaic incantation dressed in spiritual language and deployed with the anxious hope that its repetition will eventually produce results. The claim is a precise metaphysical act, the spoken assertion of a spiritual truth about a desired reality, not as something being requested, not as something being hoped for, not as something contingent upon the universe's willingness to cooperate, but as something being recognized and received as already belonging to the speaker by the law of their divine nature. This distinction between the request and the recognition is the entire difference between the word that creates and the word that merely speaks. The claim does not approach the universe as a petitioner stands before a benefactor. It approaches the universe as a sovereign stands before their own domain, naming what is already theirs by right and calling it into visible expression. To understand why the claim operates as a creative act of recognition rather than a request for delivery, one must return to the foundational metaphysical premise that underlies Shinn's entire teaching, that the universe is not withholding good from those who desire it, but that good is the natural and inevitable expression of the universe's creative nature, available in infinite supply to every person who knows their creative standing and commands the creative force with the appropriate instrument. There is no distance in the spiritual dimension between the person and the good they desire. The good is not located elsewhere, to be transported from its current location to the speaker's life through the intervention of favorable forces. It is the natural expression of the universe's abundance, withheld only by the absence of the specific command that calls it into visible form. The claim is that command, and its proper posture is not the humility of asking, but the authority of naming what the law has already assigned. Shinn's own language for the claims she taught her clients is instructive in its directness and its tonal authority. Infinite Spirit, open the way for my great abundance. I am an irresistible magnet for all that belongs to me by divine right. My good comes to me now through unexpected channels. Divine order is established in every area of my finances, and every right thing comes to me at the right time, in the right way. What is immediately striking about these formulations is not their grammatical structure, but their stance. They do not say please. They do not express desire. They state conditions as spiritual facts and invoke the organizing principle of the universe to make them visible. They are spoken from the position of a person who already knows the outcome, not because they have seen the visible evidence, but because they understand the law, and the law does not fail. The claim as a creative act requires what Shinn calls the blessing of the good before it arrives, a practical expression of the gratitude and present tense certainty that both she and Wattles identify as essential qualities of the creative act. To bless the good before its visible arrival is to speak and think about it as a present reality rather than a desired future. It is to say, I give thanks that my good is now manifesting in my life before the manifestation is visible to the physical senses. This is not self-deception. It is not the willful ignoring of present conditions. It is the act of aligning one's spoken reality with the invisible reality that the law has already established. The reality that will become visible as the invisible world's instructions are executed by the organizing forces that respond to the spoken word of authority. To bless the good before it arrives is to speak it into the space that it is already, in spiritual law, occupying. The specificity of the claim deserves a further practical examination. When Shinn instructs a person in financial difficulty to speak, the exact sum I need arrives at the right moment through the perfect channel. She is not being vague about the qualities of the desired good. She is being precise about the essence of what is needed while remaining open to the form its delivery takes. This distinction, precision about the essence, openness about the channel, is the operational principle that makes the claim maximally effective as a creative instrument. The creative force of the universe is not limited by the channels that are visible to the human mind. It can operate through pathways that the speaker has not imagined, through sources that have no apparent connection to the desired good, through a sequence of events that no human planning could have designed. The claim that names the essence and leaves the channel open gives the creative force its full range of operation. And the claim that names both the essence and the specific channel restricts that range to what the human mind has already been able to conceive, which is invariably a smaller universe than the one that the creative force inhabits. In Shinn's recorded cases, the claims that produced the most dramatic and rapid visible results were consistently those that combined maximum specificity about the desired good with maximum freedom about its delivery. The woman who needed a sum of money and claimed divine substance fills this need now through its perfect channel, received funds from a source that no one involved had anticipated. A forgotten debt repaid, an unexpected inheritance, a professional opportunity appearing from nowhere. The man who needed to resolve a business dispute and claimed divine order is now established in this situation, and everyone involved finds their right place, found the dispute resolved through a sequence of events that bore no resemblance to any of the solutions he had been attempting to engineer. In each case, the claim gave the creative force both its instruction and its freedom. And the creative force, given both, operated with a speed and completeness that exceeded what any human-managed process could have produced. The claim as a creative act is also, Shinn teaches, the specific instrument for dissolving what she calls race thought, the accumulated mass of collective human belief in limitation, lack, and the inevitability of suffering that forms a kind of invisible ceiling above the individual's creative possibilities. Race thought is not the product of any single person's experience. It is the sediment of centuries of collective human verbalization of limitation. The vast, invisible field of creative declarations of poverty, illness, failure, and fear that the combined spoken life of humanity has been generating and regenerating for as long as human beings have been speaking. The individual who has never been taught to use the claim as a creative instrument lives, in this sense, not only at the mercy of their own verbal poverty, but at the mercy of the collective verbal poverty that has been creating conditions of limitation in the world for generations. The claim, spoken with authority from the position of individual creative standing, cuts through this field of collective limitation and establishes, in the invisible world of the individual's creative sphere, a reality that the race thought has not been able to reach. The practical implication of this understanding for the use of the claim in daily life is that the claim must be more than a periodic spiritual practice. A few minutes in the morning before returning to the habitual spoken life of ordinary limitation. It must be the governing mode of one's spoken relationship to every desired good, maintained across every dimension of the day, against the continuous background pressure of both personal and collective verbal poverty. This does not mean that every moment of ordinary speech must be converted into formal affirmation. It means that the underlying posture of the claim, the posture of creative authority, divine right, and present tense certainty, must become the default spoken stance from which all language proceeds. When this posture is established as the default, the claims spoken in deliberate practice amplify a creative field that the entire spoken life is already maintaining. And the creative force of the universe, receiving a consistent and comprehensive signal, responds with a comprehensiveness and speed that no isolated practice can produce. There is a quality in Shinn's teaching on the claim that distinguishes it from every other metaphysical practice that uses positive language as a tool for change, and that quality is what might be called creative finality. The claim, properly spoken, is not an opening move in a negotiation. It is not the first bid in an auction, whose outcome depends on subsequent developments. It is a final declaration. The word spoken in the full knowledge that the creation has been initiated and the outcome is determined. The person who speaks a claim with genuine creative authority does not monitor for evidence that the creation is proceeding. They do not revise the claim based on the visible world's slow response. They do not soften it when doubt arises or amplify it when encouragement arrives. The claim was final when it was spoken, and its finality is the condition of its creative effectiveness. The universe, Shinn teaches, responds to the word that knows itself to be final, because finality is the hallmark of authority, and authority is the quality the invisible world most precisely calibrates its response to match. The most important practical instruction that Shinn gives regarding the claim is also the one that is most consistently violated by those who encounter her teaching for the first time. Speak the claim once with full authority, and then leave it in the hands of the law. This is not an instruction to speak the claim only once in a lifetime, or to never return to it. It is an instruction about the quality of the relationship between the speaker and the spoken word in the period that follows the initial declaration. The person who speaks a claim and immediately begins to wonder whether it will work has not left the claim in the hands of the law. They have retrieved it from the law and brought it back into the jurisdiction of their own doubt. The person who speaks the claim and then occupies themselves with the ordinary business of life maintaining the inner posture of one who has placed in order with a trusted supplier, has done precisely what Shinn's practice requires. They have spoken with authority, released with trust, and allowed the law to execute what the word has established. The full creative act of the claim, understood in all its dimensions, is therefore a practice of extraordinary precision and extraordinary faith simultaneously. Precision, in the selection of language that names the desired good with the clarity and present tense authority that the creative law requires. Faith, in the release that follows the speaking. The willingness to allow the invisible world to execute its work without interference, without anxious monitoring, without the withdrawal of the creative word back into the sphere of private doubt. These two qualities, precision and release, are not in tension. They are in sequence. The precision of the spoken word is the creative act. The release that follows it is the completion of the act. The affirmation, in practice, that the speaker has not merely spoken words, but exercised creative authority, and that they understand the difference between the two. When both qualities are present, the claim is not merely a spiritual practice. It is an event in the invisible world that the visible world is, from that moment, in the process of expressing. If the claim is the creative act of word power, the counterword is its systematic undoing. And Florence Scovel Shinn documents the mechanism of this undoing with a precision that is, upon reflection, more practically important than the instruction on how to speak the claim itself. The claim can be learned in an afternoon. The counterword has been in operation for a lifetime, and its eradication requires not merely the knowledge of what not to say, but the deep renovation of the habitual spoken life that has been generating counterwords with the automatic fidelity of a machine that has never been reprogrammed. Understanding the counterword is not a supplement to Shinn's teaching on the word power. It is its other face. The face that explains why so many people who have encountered this teaching and spoken their claims with apparent sincerity continue to experience the conditions they were seeking to transform. The counterword is not simply a negative word. This is the first and most important clarification, because the simple identification of negative words and their replacement with positive ones is the level at which most popular appropriations of Shinn's teaching have come to rest. And it is a level that, while not without some value, entirely misses the deeper mechanism she was describing. The counterword is any word spoken with conviction that asserts the opposite of the claimed reality. Its power is not in its negativity, but in its conviction, in the quality of certainty that it carries. The woman who claims abundance in the morning and spends the afternoon saying, "I don't know how we're going to pay this," is not merely speaking a negative word. She is speaking with the full emotional authority of someone who believes, with complete and immediate certainty, that the shortage is real, permanent, and governing, and in the creative economy of the spoken word. That conviction carries exactly the same creative force as the morning claim, directed with equal precision toward the exact opposite result. The metaphysics of this situation are not comfortable, but they are clear. The universe, as Shinn teaches it, does not average the words of the person who speaks both claim and counterword within the same day. It does not observe that the person spoke abundance in the morning and scarcity in the afternoon, and conclude that they must want something in between. The creative force responds to words, to specific, conviction-charged declarations of reality. And when two declarations of opposing realities are made within the same creative period, what the invisible world receives is a contradictory instruction. In Shinn's observation of this pattern across the lives of many clients, The result of this contradiction was not neutrality, but oscillation. Brief appearances of improvement, followed by the re-establishment of the original limiting condition, in a cycle that confirmed the speaker's belief that things could never really change, while providing no visible evidence of the creative principle at work. The cycle was itself the creation, the precise and faithful expression of a creative command that asked for both realities simultaneously. The most devastating form of the counterword is not the dramatic declaration of despair, but the casual, habitual observation that carries no emotional intensity and therefore passes entirely below the threshold of the speaker's awareness. The woman who speaks a claim in the morning and then, over lunch, says, "Of course, I've always been someone who struggles with finances," is not emoting. She's not venting. She is reporting, calmly, matter-of-factly, as though the statement were simply a neutral description of a biographical fact. And it is precisely this quality of calm, matter-of-fact certainty that makes it so powerful as a counter-decree. It carries no anxiety, no urgency, and no awareness of its own creative consequences. And it is therefore spoken with exactly the quality of settled, unquestioned conviction that Shinn identifies as the most potent form of creative authority. The quiet certainty of the casual counterword is, in many cases, more powerful than the deliberate morning claim, because it is spoken without resistance, without effort, and with the full weight of a lifetime of confirmed experience behind it. Shinn's instruction on the counterword is therefore not merely an instruction about language management. It is an instruction about the renovation of the fundamental relationship between the speaker and the substance of their daily experience. The person who wants to stop generating counterwords cannot simply monitor their vocabulary for prohibited constructions and replace them with approved ones. They must examine the foundational beliefs about themselves, about money, about their place in the order of things, the beliefs that generate the counterword spontaneously and automatically. And they must dissolve those beliefs at the root through the sustained creative practice of the spoken word of authority. This means that the counterword and the limiting belief that gives rise to it are not two problems, but one. And the practice of replacing the counterword with the claim is not an act of suppression, but an act of creative renovation at the level where the belief itself was formed. The concept of the neutralizing word is Shinn's practical instruction for the specific situation in which a counterword has already been spoken. The crisis of the afternoon, the slip of the tongue, the moment of fear that expressed itself as speech before the creative awareness could intercept it. The neutralizing word is a spoken declaration that cancels the creative decree of the counterword and restores the creative field to the orientation established by the original claim. Shinn's most commonly recorded neutralizing word is simple and complete. I cancel that word. It has no power in my world. My word of truth stands. This is not a formula of magical thinking. It is a precise metaphysical act. The withdrawal of the creative authority that was inadvertently placed behind the counter-decree, and its redeployment in the service of the claim. The universe, which receives the spoken word as a command to be executed, receives the neutralizing word as a correction to the command. And it responds to the correction with the same fidelity it brings to every other declaration. The practical importance of the neutralizing word cannot be overstated, because it provides what Shinn's system would otherwise lack: a mechanism for error correction in real time. No one who is beginning the renovation of their spoken life will do so without moments of lapse, without the counterword escaping in a moment of fear, frustration, or habitual reflex. The person who has no neutralizing practice treats each such lapse as evidence that the system doesn't work, or that they are not capable of maintaining it, or that the creative work of the morning has been permanently undone by the slip of the afternoon. The person who understands the neutralizing word treats each lapse as a simple event requiring a simple correction, and moves forward with their claim intact and their creative authority undisturbed. This difference in relationship to error is itself a demonstration of the inner posture that Shinn's teaching cultivates, not the anxious perfectionism of someone trying to be good enough for the law to work, but the calm authority of someone who understands the law well enough to use it for correction as readily as they use it for creation. There is a dimension of the counterword that extends beyond the individual speaker into the spoken environment they inhabit. The words of family members, colleagues, friends, and the ambient language of the culture at large. Shinn addresses this dimension directly and without equivocation. The words of others carry creative authority for the person who gives them credence, who receives them with the conviction of one who believes they are hearing the truth. The woman who has spoken her abundance claim in the morning and then spends the day in conversation with people who speak of scarcity, limitation, and financial fear is not merely suffering an unpleasant social experience. She is being subjected to a stream of counter-decrees that, if received with any degree of inner agreement, carry exactly the same creative consequences as the counter-decrees she might generate herself. Shinn's practical instruction for this situation is not the antisocial withdrawal from all human interaction, but the cultivation of what she calls spiritual armor, the inner alignment with the claim that is solid enough to allow the words of others to pass through one's creative field without taking hold. The spiritual armor that protects against the counterwords of others is not a wall of indifference. It is a quality of settled knowing, the same quality of knowing that underlies the original claim, that is stable enough to hear a word of limitation from another person and remain in the orientation of the creative authority rather than shifting into the orientation of the limitation that is being named. This is not the forced positivity of someone who must consciously resist what they are hearing. It is the natural stability of someone whose inner relationship to the law is solid enough that the language of limitation, however sincere or emotionally charged its source, does not find a creative foothold. The person whose inner knowing is settled does not argue with the counterword. They do not correct it aloud or react against it with dramatic counterclaims. They simply remain in the place of their authority. And in that place, the counterword of another person is received as an observation about that person's current creative state, not as a piece of information about one's own. The complete renovation of the spoken life that Shinn's teaching demands is not, therefore, merely a verbal practice. It is a practice of developing and sustaining a quality of inner creative authority that is comprehensive enough to govern one's own spoken life and stable enough to remain unaffected by the spoken lives of those around one. This inner authority is not a state that is achieved once and maintained effortlessly thereafter. It is a practice, daily, hourly, relentless in its demands and inexhaustible in its rewards, of choosing, moment by moment, which words will issue from the creative instrument of one's voice and what will be created by them. The counterword, once understood in its full creative consequences, is no longer merely a bad habit to be managed. It is the primary obstacle between the speaker and the full expression of their creative dominion. And its eradication is not a spiritual nicety, but a practical necessity for anyone who intends to use the word power with the precision and authority that Florence Scovel Shinn spent her life teaching. Among all the practices that Florence Scovel Shinn taught for the application of word power, the practice of blessing stands in a category of its own. not merely as the most generative, but as the most misunderstood. To the modern ear, accustomed to the language of personal development and the vocabulary of individual creation, the concept of blessing sounds like a practice of spiritual altruism, something one does for others at some cost to the attention and energy available for one's own creative work. Shinn's understanding is precisely the inverse. Blessing, as she teaches it, is word power directed outward from the position of one's own creative authority, and it returns to the speaker multiplied. Because the invisible world does not record the difference between what is spoken for others and what is spoken for oneself, the word of blessing initiates the same creative mechanism as the claim of personal good, with the additional quality of a generosity that the universe receives as an expression of the abundance consciousness from which all genuine creative power flows. To bless something, in Shinn's specific and operational sense, is to speak its highest potential into activation through the word power. It is not merely to wish something well, which is a private sentiment that never crosses the threshold into creative declaration. To bless is to speak, aloud, with authority, in the present tense, the fullest and most abundant reality of the person, situation, or condition being blessed. I bless this situation, and I declare divine order now established in it. I bless this person, and I release them to their highest good. I bless my finances and declare them governed by divine abundance. Each of these blessings is a creative act in the fullest sense of that term, a spoken word that sets the organizing forces of the invisible world in motion toward the condition named, with the same creative mechanism by which any claim of personal good operates. The distinction between blessing and claiming is not metaphysical. It is directional. The blessing is aimed outward, but the creative law that executes it operates in both directions simultaneously, and the speaker receives its return in the same proportion that it was given. The blessing as a generative creative force operates on a principle that Shinn articulates with particular clarity in her teaching on the relationship between giving and receiving in the invisible world. The universe, she teaches, does not recognize scarcity of blessing. The person who blesses abundantly does not deplete a finite reservoir of creative good that must then be replenished before it can be applied to their own needs. Quite the opposite, the act of blessing, because it is an act that proceeds from the consciousness of abundance, from the understanding that there is enough good to be spoken into existence for everyone simultaneously, including oneself, actually reinforces and deepens the abundance consciousness from which one's own claims of personal good draw their creative authority. The person who blesses freely is, in the most precise metaphysical sense, practicing the consciousness of limitless supply, and the invisible world, receiving this consciousness in the form of the spoken word of blessing, responds to the blesser with the full creative force of that same limitless supply. One of Shinn's most striking and counterintuitive teachings on the practice of blessing concerns the blessing of what one might ordinarily be tempted to curse. The difficult situation, the obstructive person, the condition of apparent adversity that seems most directly opposed to one's desired good. Her instruction here is absolute, and its logic is precise. To curse what opposes you, to speak words of condemnation, resistance, or resentment toward any person or condition, is to tie yourself to that person or condition through the binding force of negative creative speech, and to create in the invisible world a perpetuating relationship between yourself and the very thing you most desire to be free of. The resentment that is verbalized is a creative decree that the object of resentment should remain central and permanent in your experience, because you have spoken it into that position with the creative authority of your voice. Blessing dissolves this bond. It releases the obstructive person to their own good, which simultaneously releases you from the creative tie that kept them in the position of obstacle. The blessing is not charity. It is creative self-liberation. The practical application of this principle to the specific domain of financial relationships is where Shinn's teaching on blessing becomes most immediately useful and most immediately testable. The person who looks at a bill they cannot pay and curses the creditor, the system, the circumstance, who speaks words of resentment, fear, or resigned impossibility about the situation, is not merely experiencing a psychological reaction to difficulty. They are actively creating, through the word power, a reinforcement of exactly the condition of lack that produced the bill in the first place. Shinn's instruction for this precise situation is to bless the bill, to speak over it, literally, aloud, the words, "I bless this bill, and give thanks that divine substance fills this need now." This is not a gesture of optimistic denial. It is a precise creative act that does three things simultaneously. It dissolves the counter-creative force of the resentment and fear that were directed at the bill. It speaks the creative word of abundance into the specific situation of a lack. And it establishes, in the consciousness of the speaker, the posture of one who already knows that the need is met, which is the precise inner position from which the creative force can operate most freely. The blessing of other people, particularly those with whom one is in relationship and whose circumstances one desires to see improve, is one of the most powerful and frequently documented applications of Shinn's word power in her recorded practice. She instructed her clients not merely to hold good thoughts about the people in their lives, but to speak specific blessings aloud, to name the person and declare their highest good into existence with the full authority of the creative word. The results she documented in these cases are some of the most dramatic in all of her recorded work. Estranged relationships restored, seemingly impossible reconciliations occurring, people whose conditions appeared fixed and irreversible, moving into new and expansive expressions of their lives, often without any direct action on the part of the person who spoke the blessing. The blessing creates in the invisible world of the blessed person's life the same organizing movement toward good that the claim creates in the invisible world of the speaker's own life. It is, in this sense, one of the most generous and most powerful applications of the creative word available to a human being. What makes the blessing as a daily practice particularly powerful is its cumulative quality. The way in which the regular practice of speaking blessings over every dimension of one's life builds, over time, a creative field of abundance consciousness that becomes the ambient medium of one's spoken existence. The person who blesses their home, their finances, their relationships, their body, their work, and the people they encounter throughout the day is not merely performing isolated acts of verbal creation. They are constructing, word by word and day by day, a spoken world in which abundance, order, and good are the governing realities. A creative field that has a self-reinforcing quality, because each blessing spoken from within it both draws on and deepens the consciousness of limitless supply from which it arises. This is what Shinn means when she says that the blessing comes back to the speaker multiplied, not as a reward for the virtue of generosity, but as the natural consequence of a creative act that simultaneously generates and deepens the consciousness of abundance in the one who performs it. The blessing as a creative act also operates with particular force in the domain of what Shinn calls the divine design. The understanding that every person, Every situation and every condition has a perfect expression that is already established in the invisible world and is seeking to emerge into visible form. To bless is to speak the word power in the direction of this perfect invisible expression, to declare it into visibility with the authority of one who knows it to be there. This is different from the projection of one's own preferences onto another person's life. The blessing. I release you to your highest good and bless you on your perfect path, does not name a specific outcome for the person being blessed. It invokes the creative force of the invisible world in the direction of their inherent perfection, which is always a richer and more complete expression of good than anything the blessing speaker could design for them. This distinction between blessing toward one's own vision of another's good and blessing toward the universe's vision of it is one of the most important nuances in Shinn's teaching on the practice of blessing. And it is one that has the most profound consequences for the quality and completeness of the results it produces. Florence Scovel Shinn describes, in her teaching and in her recorded practice, a specific inner experience that marks the precise moment at which the spoken word has been fully received by the invisible world, and the creative machinery of manifestation has been set in irreversible motion. She calls this experience simply and memorably the click. It is not a metaphor. It is her clinical description of a distinct, recognizable, and repeatable inner event. One that she had observed in her own practice and in the experiences of the clients she counseled across decades of work. And one that she regarded as the most reliable signal available to the human being that the creative act has been completed. The click is not an emotion, though it is often accompanied by a particular quality of feeling. It is not a state of elevated spiritual energy or visionary experience. It is, in the most precise possible description, a release, an immediate and unmistakable dissolution of the inner tension that accompanies the unmet need, followed by a quality of settled, unforced certainty that requires no maintenance and seeks no confirmation. The person who has experienced the click does not continue to wonder whether the word has taken hold. The wondering has stopped, not through the discipline of suppression, but through the natural absence of any remaining need to wonder. The claim has been received. The need to speak it again has dissolved. The anxious monitoring for early signs of visible evidence has ceased. What remains is a natural background quality of knowing. The certainty of someone who has placed an order with a supplier they know to be reliable and can now attend to other matters with the full confidence that the order is being fulfilled. The click is, in metaphysical terms, the moment at which the creative act crosses the threshold from the dimension of the speaker's intention into the dimension of the invisible world's organization. It is the moment at which the word ceases to be the speaker's possession and becomes the universe's instruction. Before the click, the claim is held. After the click, it has been given, fully and finally, to the creative force that will execute it. This is why the click is accompanied by release. The speaker is no longer holding the creation. It has been received, and the receipt is confirmed not by any external evidence, but by the inner transformation of the speaker's relationship to the desired good. From the active tension of one who is seeking to the natural ease of one who is expecting. Shinn's instruction regarding the click is important, not because the click is a goal to be achieved through effort, but because it is a natural consequence of speaking the creative word with genuine authority. The person who speaks the claim from the position of true creative knowing, who genuinely understands in the moment of speaking that the law is real and their creative standing is real, and the word they are speaking is an event in the invisible world rather than a private aspiration. We'll experience the click as the natural completion of that act of knowing. It does not need to be manufactured. It cannot be manufactured. It is the organic response of the full creative instrument, mind, voice, and inner knowing aligned simultaneously to the completion of the creative act. The person who speaks the claim and does not experience the click has not yet arrived at the quality of knowing that makes the claim genuinely creative rather than aspirationally verbal. And the appropriate response is not to speak the claim more frequently or more forcefully, but to examine and deepen the understanding from which the claim is spoken. The click also serves a specific and practically important function in the broader practice of the spoken creative life. It marks the transition between creation and reception, and between the two different postures that each requires. Before the click, the appropriate practice is the claim, spoken with authority, present tense, specific in its naming of the desired good. After the click, the appropriate practice is what Shinn describes as walking by faith, moving forward in the visible world in the manner consistent with the invisible reality that the word has established, maintaining the inner posture of one who is receiving, rather than one who is still seeking. This is the practice of living from the end of the creative act, rather than from the middle of it, conducting oneself in all the ordinary dimensions of visible life, as though the creation is already complete, and its visible expression is simply the final stage of a process that has already, in its essential reality, occurred. This posture is not pretense. It is the outer expression of the inner knowing that the click confirms. The experience of the click and the quality of release that characterizes it is also the most reliable diagnostic tool available to the speaker for assessing the quality of the creative act they have performed. The person who speaks a claim and feels only a slight lightening, a modest improvement in mood, a brief moment of encouraged thinking before the familiar anxiety returns, has not experienced the click. They have experienced the temporary psychological effect of speaking positive language, which is a real phenomenon, but a fundamentally different one from the metaphysical event Shinn describes. The click is not a matter of degree. It is a qualitative distinction. The difference between the word that was spoken from the position of genuine creative authority and the word that was spoken from the position of hopeful seeking. And because it is a qualitative distinction, it provides the speaker with precise, immediate, and actionable feedback about where they actually stand in their understanding of the law. Feedback that is far more valuable than any number of visible results, because it identifies that the exact point in the creative act where the work of deepening the understanding must continue. What the click ultimately reveals, in its full metaphysical significance, is that the visible manifestation of the spoken word's creation is not the moment of creation. It is the moment of arrival. The creation occurred at the moment the word was spoken with genuine authority and confirmed by the click. Everything that follows, the visible rearrangement of circumstances, the unexpected opening of channels, the arrival of the specific good that was named, is not the creative event. It is the delivery of what was already created in the invisible world. This understanding transforms the entire experience of the interval between the spoken word and its visible expression. The interval that, without this understanding, is the breeding ground of doubt, impatience, and the counterwords that undo the creation. When the speaker knows that the creation is already complete, and that what they are watching is not the process of creation, but the process of delivery, the interval loses its power to destabilize. The click has confirmed that the order is placed and the supplier is reliable. The delivery will arrive in its right time, through its right channel, in its right form, and the only remaining task of the speaker is to remain in the posture of one who is ready to receive what has already, in all the ways that matter, been given. The invisible world has always been listening. This is not a statement of aspiration or spiritual hope. It is the foundational premise of every serious metaphysical tradition that has engaged with the question of human creative power. And it is the premise from which Florence Scovel Shinn's entire body of teaching proceeds with the settled authority of someone who has tested it beyond the point of doubt. The word you speak is received. It is received with a precision that matches the precision with which it was delivered. It is received with a seriousness proportional to the conviction behind it. And it is executed by the organizing forces of the invisible world, working through the channels of circumstance, relationship, and synchronicity, with a fidelity that neither time nor the resistance of visible conditions can ultimately obstruct. The question has never been whether the creative mechanism is real. It is real in the way that the law of gravity is real. Not because anyone has voted for it, but because the evidence of its operation is inscribed in the life of every human being who has ever drawn breath and spoken a word into the world. What Florence Scovel Shinn provided that the broader metaphysical tradition had left incompletely articulated was the specific understanding of the spoken word as the completing act of creation. The act that takes the inner architecture of faith, image, and knowing and drives it across the threshold from the private world of the individual's intention into the shared world of the universe's creative response. The thought conceives, the feeling charges, but the spoken word creates. It is the act of commitment, the staking of the desired reality in the invisible ground of formless substance, that initiates the irreversible process by which the invisible becomes visible. This is not one method among many. It is the completion of the creative act, the final element without which the entire architecture of inner work remains suspended in the dimension of pure possibility, never crossing into the dimension of created form. The synthesis of everything that Shinn's teaching reveals is not a complicated formula. It is a simple recognition, stated with absolute clarity and followed consistently across every dimension of the spoken life. The recognition is this: every word you speak with conviction is a creative decree, and the invisible world executes your decrees with perfect fidelity. From this recognition flows everything: the practice of the claim, the eradication of the counterword, the use of blessing as a generative force, the cultivation of the inner knowing that produces the creative authority from which the word draws its power. None of these practices requires a gift that you do not possess. None of them demands a level of spiritual achievement that must be attained before the law will operate in your favor. They require only the understanding of the law and the willingness to bring your spoken life into full alignment with the creative authority that is already yours, that has always been yours. By the law of your nature, as a creative instrument of the divine. The creative instrument you hold is not new. You have been using it since the first word you ever spoke. What changes with this understanding is not the instrument. It is the awareness of the hand that holds it. The recognition that the chisel has always been in your grip, that the marble has always been responsive, and that the only question that has ever been at stake is whether you would carve with intention or continue to let your hand move without guidance, creating by default the forms that your unexamined language had been designing all along. The form your life takes from this moment is not determined by forces beyond your reach. It is determined by the words you choose to speak with conviction into the invisible fabric of existence. And the invisible fabric has never been more ready to receive them than it is now. Florence Scovel Shinn wrote 4 books that fit in a coat pocket. She did not build an institution. She did not leave behind a school or lineage in the formal sense. What she left behind was a law, stated clearly, demonstrated repeatedly, accessible to anyone willing to bring the intellectual seriousness and inner discipline required to apply it. The law is this: the spoken word, issued from the position of one's divine creative authority, with specificity, present tense certainty, and the conviction of genuine knowing, impresses the formless substance of the universe with the form it names, and initiates the irreversible process of that form's visible manifestation. This is not a belief system that requires faith in something undemonstrated. It is a law that invites, demands, the most direct and personal form of verification. Apply it with precision and observe the results. The results are the argument. They have always been the argument. You are not waiting for permission to use this instrument. You never were. The creative authority that Shinn describes is not conferred by a teacher, confirmed by an institution, or awakened by a spiritual initiation that you may or may not have undergone. It is the natural and inalienable property of every human being who is capable of forming a word with intention and speaking it into the world. The woman in financial crisis who came to Shinn's office in Lower Manhattan in 1925 had no more natural creative authority than you have sitting in this moment. The only difference between her condition before she learned the law and her condition after she applied it was the precise understanding of what she was doing when she spoke, and the willingness to bring that understanding to bear on the entirety of her spoken life, with the rigor and consistency the law required. This is what the great teachers of the metaphysical tradition have always been saying beneath the varying vocabularies and cultural contexts in which they have found themselves speaking. They have said it in the language of the Torah, in the precision of the Vedic sutras, in the disciplined prose of Wattles, in the warm and practical counsel of Florence Scovel Shinn. The universe is not a fixed and finished object that you inhabit as a passive observer. It is a responsive, creative medium, a thinking substance that receives the impression of your creative authority and moves with the intelligence and precision of a master craftsman toward the expression of the form that your word has established in it. You are not a creature of circumstance. You are a creative center, individualized, specific, and endowed by the law of your own nature, with the power to call the conditions of your life into being through the instrument of the spoken word. What this means for the life you are living now, today, in the specific and practical circumstances of your present existence, is not abstract. It means that the conditions you are experiencing are not permanent verdicts. They are the visible expressions of the impressions that have been made upon the formless substance of your creative field by the cumulative force of your spoken life. They are, in the most precise metaphysical sense, your previous words made visible. And if they are your previous words made visible, then they are precisely as revisable as your current words are willing to be different. There is no condition in your life, no financial situation, no relationship pattern, no physical circumstance, no professional limitation that is not responsive to the creative word spoken from the position of genuine authority. The law does not have exceptions. It has only degrees of application. And the degree to which you apply it with precision, consistency, and the full quality of knowing that Shinn's teaching cultivates is the degree to which it will reveal its operation in the visible world of your experience. The dignity that this teaching restores to the human being who genuinely understands it is not a small thing. Modern culture has produced an elaborate and pervasive mythology of victimhood. The understanding of human life as a series of conditions delivered by forces beyond one's control, to which the only appropriate response is adaptation, resilience, and the management of one's psychological reaction. Shinn's teaching does not comfort this mythology. It dissolves it. Not with the evangelical energy of a reformer, but with the quiet, devastating precision of a teacher who has simply shown, case by case and result by result, that the mythology is false. You are not the product of your circumstances. Your circumstances are the product of your creative speech. This is not a comforting reassurance. It is the most demanding truth available to a human being, and it is also the most liberating, because it locates the power of change exactly where you are standing. In the word that you speak in this moment, with the full authority of the creative instrument you have always been. The call that this understanding issues is not to a new regime of effort or more rigorous system of personal management. It is a call to awareness. The specific, precise, and immediate awareness of what you are doing every time you open your mouth and speak a word into the world. Not just in the morning affirmation, not just in the deliberate creative practice, but in the kitchen at breakfast, in the conversation with a colleague, in the interior monologue that becomes spoken language, in the casual remark that passes between people with no awareness of the creative decree it carries. Every word is a creative act. Every word is being received and executed. Every word is, in the invisible world where creation begins, the staking of a reality that the visible world is already, in this very moment, beginning to arrange itself around. The question that Shinn's entire body of work places before you is not whether this is true. It is what you intend to do with it. The answer to that question is not given here. It is yours to speak. There is a challenge that Shinn's teaching issues to everyone who encounters it with sufficient seriousness to feel its full weight. And it is not a challenge of effort or discipline in the ordinary sense. It is a challenge of honesty. Before you reach for a new claim, before you compose the perfect affirmation, before you begin the practice of blessing with deliberate and systematic intention, Shinn asks you to sit for a moment with the full implications of the law you have just been shown. You have been creating your entire life, not occasionally, not when you were in a particularly deliberate or spiritually focused state, continuously, automatically, and with perfect fidelity to the words you have been speaking with conviction since you were old enough to form a sentence. The conditions of your life, every one of them, are, at some level and in some proportion, the visible expression of the impressions your spoken life has been making on the invisible world for as long as you have been speaking. That is either the most unsettling thing you have heard today, or it is the most clarifying. Shinn's teaching says it must be both. The challenge, then, is not to perform a new practice. It is to take complete possession of a creative authority that has been operating in your life without your full consent or awareness, and to claim it from this moment forward as a responsibility that you exercise with the precision and intentionality it deserves. This is a different kind of demand from the one that motivational culture makes on you. It does not ask you to try harder or believe more fervently or find the emotional intensity to sustain a state you were not in yesterday. It asks you to understand, with the cold, clear, unsentimentalized understanding of someone who has examined a law and found it to be real, and then to speak from that understanding with the authority that understanding makes possible. The understanding is the work. The speaking is its natural expression. The spoken word is the most powerful thing you will use today. Not the most powerful tool in a category called spiritual practice. The most powerful thing, period, in the full catalog of actions available to you in the visible world. More powerful than the plan you make, the meeting you attend, the money you spend, the effort you deploy. Because all of those things operate within the dimension of visible effect. The spoken word operates at the level of invisible cause. Every condition you want to change, every good you want to call into existence, every limitation you want to dissolve, each of these is already addressed, already answered, already in the process of its expression in the invisible world, the moment you speak the claim that names it with authority, present tense certainty, and the conviction of genuine creative knowing. This is not a metaphor for taking responsibility. It is the actual mechanics of how your reality is constructed. And it has been constructing your reality since before you ever heard Florence Scovel Shinn's name. Write in the comments, "I speak it into being." Not as a declaration of aspiration, not as a signal to the algorithm, as a practice of what you now know. The first deliberate use of the word power, spoken with the awareness of what you are actually doing when you speak it. Let it be the first word of the creative life that begins in this moment, with full awareness of its own authority. Subscribe to this channel and follow this work, because what has been shown here is not an introduction to a concept. It is an introduction to a law. And the law has more dimensions, more applications, and more recorded demonstrations of its operation than any single examination can contain. The great masters of the metaphysical tradition left behind a body of knowledge that the modern world has largely reduced to slogans and surface-level positivity. This work exists to recover it, in its full depth, its full precision, and its full transformative force. The next teaching continues where this one ends. The invisible world is listening. It has always been listening. Speak with authority. Speak with precision. Speak in the present tense. Speak what belongs to you by the law of your divine creative nature. And understand, for the first time, that you have never needed to wait for your good. You have only needed to speak it.